Hi, I'm Ray Johnson. I chair the East Kent Economic Development Group, and I'm here today with some of my colleagues. Part of the proceedings of our group is to really communicate what's going on within the regions, and we cover within the scope of East Kent the Folkestone Hyde district that some of you are familiar with the local authority, then over to Dover, and then to the east over to Thanet. And we pull out all of the different elements that are going on within these districts that have economic growth to help support our businesses, to help support the economy, of course, and naturally employment. So what we do is we collate information coming through. We look at projects and sort of economic growth to see what's happening within those districts. And then if we feel as a group that it's something that could be reported or should be reported to the board of the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce, of which I'm a board member. We then profile and send that to the board for comment, and then if necessary, that then gets reported further, if you like, up the chain to the Kent County Council, other regional authorities within the district, and then further afield into London. So it could be direct to government links that we have, or indeed via the British Chambers of Commerce, for which the Chamber, you may be aware, is accredited to. And again, the British Chambers of Commerce have an awful lot of engagement with governments in the hope that things get done, as it were, to improve the economy. So today we're going to be bringing up a question really to my colleagues, my fellow board members, just about the COVID situation, first of all, just to ask how their business within their sector is coping. And then afterwards we go around the table, as it were, again to just ask what's going on within the sector. So a bit of an update for you, which might be of use to you to gather some of this information. And then maybe, you know, if you decide to link a bit further with the Kent Invicta Chamber, the Chamber is there to help you. Some of those things that are going on within the Chamber, no doubt you're aware as a member, but we've been very, very busy with assisting businesses as a Chamber. An awful lot is happening. We know the COVID situation, you know, is very hard to deal with, but there's things changing and funding available. There's quite a variety. There's a Kickstart program. There's the Growth Hub that is all part of encompassing all of these growth funding facilities via the government, and we're there to help and guide with an experienced team to assist you on that and to gather and to help you get the funding that you might need, or indeed via the local authority that's part of the delivery system. And of course all the local authorities in Kent are engaged fully with the Chamber, and we are the driver for that. So that's enough from me. So what I'll do, I'll pass you over to my first colleague Mark, and I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves and name their company. The first question then is just around the COVID situation. How's your company coping or dealing with that? So Mark.
Hi, yes. So I'm Mark Minus. I'm a partner at MHA McIntyre Hudson, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Yeah, it's been an interesting time, I have to say. One of certainly as a partner, one of the main dealings that we have is meeting clients, and so it's been quite a difficult start in that all of a sudden stopped, and then of course then the technology kicks in and you start the Zoom meetings, the team meetings, the Ring Central meetings, and once again that's a difficult concept because you're not actually talking to people, and it's a lot easier to be face to face, even though you're looking at someone's face. The body expressions and so on doesn't always come through, but it's been an interesting time, and clients have gradually worked towards that. I say the bigger clients have coped with it a lot better, but yeah, it's now starting to become quite the norm to have final meetings for audits via Teams or something like that. So it's been an interesting time. In terms of the staff, that was a difficult area. Initially, with people working from home, lots of staff didn't have the space in their houses, and were finding the dining room table and so on, and setting up double screen monitors, all of that sort of thing was quite an interesting thing. Now it's become something that people are readily not wanting to change. And we have at the moment a sort of a rota system for people coming in. So every day there's a set number of people who are coming in. And if anyone extra wants to come in, they have to check in first to make sure there's space, because obviously we still have the 2 meter spacing and so on. But it is working. It is working quite well.
Okay, Mark, that's fine. So obviously,
backlog, but we are busy
adapting and changing. But you look as though you're in the office today, are you?
I'm in the office. I've actually been in the office all the time because we had the policy that a partner would have to come in, deal with the post and so on, and whatever comes in. Work was still coming in in parcels and things like that. So that was still going on. But
Okay.
I've been in the office all the time, really. But
Okay, Mark, great. So we go over to Therese.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Therese. I'm the Business Development Manager for Martello. We are a small building consultancy in the heart of the creative quarter in Folkestone. And we offer architectural technical packages. We offer CDM, project management, project coordination, surveying, etc., all under one sort of roof, so to speak, although the roof has, now become various houses that we work from. But no, so I would say with regards to COVID, we've had a few on furlough, a few of us working from home. Since May, we've been extremely busy, and what it's done is it's kind of forced us to, to really focus on sort of restructuring our business. And we've also invested quite a bit of money in a sort of a new IT managed system where we can all kind of, let's say, in simple terms, dip in and see what each other are busy with, and we can update so that we have our meeting once a week on Monday on Teams. But for the rest of it, we are more aware of what who's working on what, and updating. So yes, I think in that sense, it's been a really positive change, because as I said, we're only a small consultancy. We've taken on another 2 sort of members, one which I'm very pleased to say we had more than 3 years ago for work experience from a local grammar school. And she's just about to complete her degree in architecture. So we are very pleased that it's actually worked out. And it just proved to us that those kind of relationships, that you nurture, it can really pay off on both ends, I think, for businesses and students at the same time. And then we've also outsourced one, we've sort of taken on a team, and she's actually not based in the UK, and it's worked out really well. So I think overall, yes, it's been a challenge, like for most. I think being a smaller business, of course, it makes it so much easier than the larger companies, because what we're all finding is that we have to adapt almost on a daily basis now. We've got to sort of really think outside the box. For myself, in terms of the building, the business development manager, same as what Mark said, it was really, really sort of forced me to get out into more sort of doing the Zoom meetings, which I love more face to face. I think you build relationships, as you said, also with regards to body language, but realizing that this is genuinely the new normal. So we've got to embrace it and with a positive attitude. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry. So over to Lee, if I may.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. My name's Lee May. I'm a partner at Bracier's Solicitors. We've got 3 offices and approximately, I think it's 200 staff or so now. And I think from when COVID first reared its ugly head, we immediately set up, or rather used the existing business continuity planning team that we have within the firm to really focus on how we can respond to COVID. because obviously, as all businesses have had to do, we've had to adapt quite significantly. So the group, the BCP group, which I'm a part of, along with a few other members of the firm, made sure we put in place a very clear risk assessment following the guidance from central government. We've all probably looked at those various guides that are relevant to our sector. And for us, it was obviously the office environment that we were looking at. So we put in place a very clear risk assessment, communicated that to all of the staff, communicated to our staff and clients what measures we'd put in place to make sure that we had a COVID secure environment. And then over a period of time, that enabled us to reopen our offices, having initially all gone into complete lockdown and worked from home. So now, and obviously as a law firm, there are some situations where we do need to meet people face to face. So making sure that our office environments were COVID secure so we could do that. As a firm, we were fortunate in that we'd already implemented a policy of equipping all staff with facilities to work from home. So we were very fortunate that, or whether it was fortune or good planning, I don't know, but being ahead of the curve in terms of having the necessary IT available to everybody to work from home. So in the initial phase, when we were all locked down, we could all do that pretty seamlessly. But like I say, we've now started to open the offices a little bit more for client meetings where necessary, albeit that the majority of staff are still working from home pretty much all the time. So yeah, I think we've adapted pretty well to it, thankfully.
Okay, thanks for that, Lee. So just want to come over to Ella, if I may.
Thank you, Ray. So Ella Brocklebank, I'm the Business Development Manager for Jenna Group. So we are main contractors based in Folkestone. So just general updates on the COVID side of things. So we made the decision soon after the government announcement to close all sites. We did toy with the idea of whether there were some sites that were more in the best interest of society, should we keep them open, etc. But in the end, it was just a sort of a moral judgment call, really, that we felt that we needed to shut down the whole business to keep everybody safe while we sort of reacclimatized and prepared ourselves accordingly. So we shut down all sites very swiftly. So in that first week, they all closed, and that was ahead of any government guidance to do so. So it was very sort of ambiguous. One second, we were being told lockdown, work from home, stay home, but we then had it coming from government that will know construction, your key workers, you've got to keep going. But I think, as anyone knows, we're just nobody's going to be prepared for a global pandemic and what that looks like on a construction site. So we just made the call, really, and sort of took guidance that, well, we'd be protected by the furlough scheme, which we have been, which has been an absolute godsend. And yeah, it was the right thing to do. We've since done a survey with our staff, kind of getting their opinion on whether they felt that we've sort of handled things correctly, whether they felt it was the right thing to do, and whether they felt safe on their return to work. And that's all been incredibly positive, and all very supportive of the actions we've taken. Furloughed 90% of staff, kept a core staff to basically reassess and get everything moving again. So signage out on sites, new systems, policies, procedures, external communications, internal communications. So I think it's been key for us is the internal communications, actually, with our teams, really, being also remote as the sites have got back open from, that was the end of April and early May that everything was back up and running. We've just sort of issued weekly updates just to keep everyone, and actually they've said, well, no, yeah, okay, we're all back and we're functioning, but can they continue, actually, because that's been such a positive thing. So I think there's always some positives to take out of any situation. It has made us work more efficiently via Teams and Zoom, especially as now we have projects in Sussex as well, so actually that makes, you don't necessarily need to drive and lose sort of half a day just for one meeting. So yeah, it's been a very interesting time, a very challenging time, but we're just amazed, really, by the resilience of our people and their kind of relentless enthusiasm to keep moving forwards. We've now sort of, since we follow the Construction Leadership Council guidance, and that's now gone to another level with further face coverings on site, and we've implemented that straight away. So I think we've done everything within our power, and we've acted in the best way we could do, really. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, but yeah, you think, oh gosh, are things ever going to get back to normal? But maybe this is just normal now as we know it, and we've just got to keep going, really.
Yeah, okay, Ella, thank you for that. So I'll come over to Dan, if I may.
Yeah, hi, morning. Daniel San Giuseppe from Castlewood Hotels, which is my family business for 26 years now, which is 3 hotels in the southeast, of which the one in Folkestone is the Burlington, which is a Best Western Plus 4-star hotel. And with that hotel specifically, I'm a member of this board, and I also am the local chair of the Hotel and Catering Association and the local Folkestone High Tourism Business Advisory Board. So it's with that sort of hat on I represent the hospitality sector on this at this table. And our industry has, of course, been one that's been hit pretty hard by COVID. As everyone knows, back in March, we had a lockdown. So our hotels were fully closed. We couldn't take a penny of income. All our revenue literally went to zero overnight, and that didn't reopen until July. During that period, like everybody else, we tried to utilize furlough as much as possible to retain as many of the staff that we could who were eligible. And then when we reopened, of course, because we didn't know what was going on, and we were so nervous about the uptake of sales with all the reduced capacity and other restrictions that had been placed upon us, we did decide to sort of try and streamline some of our staff. So some redundancies were made on reopening, and some more redundancies were then made subsequently as the furlough scheme was due to sort of taper off towards October, inevitably, because there was going to be more cost and on the business. So many businesses in our industry did do it that way, basically to sort of try and slowly reduce the workforce as and when we could. We pretty much did initially have about 90% of our staff on the furlough, and now I'd say we probably have managed to streamline, and we probably have about we've had to reduce, I'd say, 20% of our staff, of our workforce now at this stage, with the furlough ending at this week, as it were. But of course, luckily, as of last week, there is this new support scheme, which is a lot more helpful as well. And so we will be able to, at least going into the winter, which of course now the autumn and winter is our biggest fear, especially being a coastal hotel, is that business is going to be tough enough as it is on a normal time of the year, in normal conditions this time of the year. But actually, with all the current restrictions with international tourism, quarantines, corporate traveling being restricted, you've got half the country on a tier 2, tier 3, meaning that they're also not coming down. We've got also the existing measures in place where many people are nervous about going out to socialize for a meal or a drink. The restriction of the capacity, the rule of 6. Now you've got a curfew as well, 10 o'clock, as you all know, in the bars and restaurants, which again hampers us in particular on weekends. The extra COVID measures that we've had to put in place have been, like many other people, investing in some technology so that actually you can, for example, do an online check-in before you get to the hotel, all about limiting touch points and contact and making it as seamless as possible for the experience for a customer to be able to check in and check out without having too much time, as it were, with in an environment with other people, being able to scan all the menus with QR codes and send those things in advance as well, communicating via WhatsApp. Internally, we've been communicating via Teams as well during the lockdown. We had really good communications, as Ella said, that has we've streamlined some processes and improved communications, not just internally, but actually as a sector. There were weekly team meetings within Best Western, within Visit Kent, within the councils, trying to help us and communicate as much as possible with the local MPs as well, just to try and understand what we could do with the guidance, how to reopen, things about PPE, how far did we need to go with regards to PPE, screens, in the bars, at reception, all forms of mitigation, basically, to get a second opinion and to bounce off other colleagues in the industry. So that was really good. But as I say, even though we reopened, there have been some good moments with staycation effect, with the weather being okay in part, Eat Out to Help Out, a few other initiatives with the VAT being reduced as well. All was okay during August to September. But of course, as I say, big concern now going into November, December, January, February, especially with all those restrictions. You know, Christmas parties not happening, even Christmas, what to do. You've got the restrictions of, say, tables of 6. And then going into the winter, no corporates and events or corporate events or meetings or even weddings and celebrations happening. So it's a tough old time, and we're still having to just monitor it on a regular basis to see what restrictions keep on changing and what COVID implementations we have to consider to make it viable for our hotel.
Okay, yeah, because compared to some of the other businesses that have spoken earlier, you know, you've got a whole host of things going on with people coming into the building, sleeping overnight, and restaurant, and so it's a very diversified. So very interesting. Okay, well, similarly, Matthew, he's involved in the transport sector. Matthew, if we can come to you, how are you doing?
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm Matthew Arnold, Business Development Director for Stagecoach in the South East. I'm also, I don't think I've told this group because I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm also now a board member of the South East Local Enterprise Partnership, so flying the flag for East Kent in that forum. So all the way back in March when lockdown happened, our business started trading at about 20% of what we'd have expected to see had the pandemic not happened. And government advice was, I never thought I'd see it, but the government advice was to not use public transport, which was very difficult for us. But we kept running for key workers, worked very closely with the NHS in particular, supermarkets and those businesses that were still able to trade in the early days of lockdown. And in order to do that and run the most effective service possible to meet those needs, we have to run about 40% of what we'd normally run. Now, it doesn't take a degree in economics to work out that 20% of your revenue using 40% of the resource to deliver it, there's a blooming big gap there. And we've been fortunate all the way through in that we've had central government funding in order to bridge that gap. And quite frankly, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be running, or we wouldn't be running anything like what we're running at the moment. So that position matured during the summer and got us to the point where, of course, schools went back at the beginning of September. And because of the unique scheme that we have in the county of Kent for discounted travel for school children, that probably presented the biggest headache of the year for us, in that we have social distancing in place, and the social distancing requirements mean that if we're running 100% of our vehicles, which we are now, we only have 60% of the capacity available. What we didn't then know was how many children were going to turn up. And we've been playing a bit of a catch-up game over the last few weeks as we've understood where new flows are happening. In partnership with the county council, we've hired local coach operators who have no work at the moment to fill the capacity gap. So we're kind of treading water at the moment, albeit with some government support to ensure that we're able to continue to trade. We, in common with many other industries and members of this group, had a bit of a rationalisation, and we ended up making a number of head office posts redundant, which was a very difficult time actually, and equally difficult, I think, for the people that are left behind that have obviously lost colleagues. And we're expecting more of them in very difficult times.
Yeah. Okay.
The worst thing I think for us is just trying to understand what the future is. We're treading water at the moment, but we can't plan. We don't know when we're coming out of this. We don't know when social distancing is going to be relaxed. We don't know whether if there are going to be any further local lockdowns. So actually, we're kind of living almost hand to mouth, waiting for the next big bombshell to happen, which we're quite well placed to respond to. But yeah, we're kind of holding our own for the time being.
Okay, thank you for that, Matthew. That's great. And I'll come straight back to you, Matthew, because I appreciate you might have to leave soon. So we come back to the sector bit in a few moments. But can I come over to Kimberly about the COVID? Kimberly, how are you doing and where are you from?
Very interesting comments from everyone. I think we're all feeling and going through the same thing. For Discovery Park, per se.
Sorry, can you just introduce yourself, Kimberly? For
sorry, Kimberly Anderson.
Okay. Yeah.
Kimberly Anderson, project manager, Discovery Park. We are a business site, so all different sectors. So we're having to work with all sorts of constraints within this COVID, because some people can come into work, some businesses can't, and it's our job to manage the site and make sure it's safe if you can come into work. So what we've done is very similar to what you've all been talking about. We've ensured that the place is as safe as possible. The health and safety managers on site are working absolutely non-stop. You literally, as soon as you touch, if you go walking upstairs, it will be cleaned. The toilets are cleaned every 10 minutes. It's quite incredible, and people do feel safe to actually work on the site, which I think is quite important, because a lot of people are finding that they prefer to work in their office as opposed to at home. Some people are very happy working at home, but there are difficulties in both. We seem to have overcome that at Discovery Park so that you feel safe, and I think that's a real bonus. I was also really interested in what you guys were saying about, Ella saying about the positives and resilience and the enthusiasm. I think that's what we've thrown into this to get over the difficulties. Daniel, I really appreciate in hospitality, it's much harder than if you're in, the business type of sectors. And I think that positivity has come through with many companies, hasn't it? Yeah. So what we're doing at the moment, obviously, what's very telling and a positive comment to make to you is our startup zone is absolutely soaring. We're needing to find extra space for it. And I think what that is saying is people are thinking out of the box and starting up other companies. And I think that is fantastic for the economy. We're very, very busy with that. We're actually busier than we've ever been. And I think that's really, really important. We're talking about, as Matthew was saying, he's got more difficulties than we have because, of course, social distancing is so important when you're on transport. We don't have that as much. So what we're doing is trying to help overcome the difficulties we have at the moment. So if I talk very briefly just about where we're thinking about the future, it's how we can work with our partners, which you are part of that, to generate ideas and commitment, basically, to the idea that the pandemic can drive innovation about how employers, schools, and students interact. So when I'm talking about us moving forward as a company, Discovery Park, looking at hubs, working virtually on education, employment, and working with our partners in business, that is the way forward at the moment, because this virus is not going away. So we're working on linking with everybody through this webinar, virtual strategy. And I guess everybody else is on board with that. And we're trying to quickly become experts at doing so. So conferences, virtual education, working with partners is the way we feel we're going forward, and working with local government, central government on seeing how we can work together to get some funding to move us forward to that next level, whether it's a digital level, which is very important, virtual events to help head teachers, etc., to help employers get their skilled, the talent that they need, and to help those students move forward in this very difficult time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Kimberly, because that's very interesting, as you touched on something that I think is very important for lots of businesses to, forgive me, I don't want to say the word wake up, but it could be a bit of a wake up call within the realms of what's been going on, to buddy up with other businesses, to find other partners to work with more closely. And I think that could be a good thing. It might sound a bit, well, I don't need to do that. Well, because like you've touched on, Kimberly, rightly so, and Matthew, how long is this going to be going on for? So it's, you know, a difficult thing. Interesting discussion, just very briefly. You know, there's some positivity, which is great to hear. It was interesting, only one of you mentioned about redundancy. I didn't expect you to. I mean, obviously it might be something you have on the cards, but it is regrettable, and I think there will be more redundancies around. I think, Lee, you mentioned about the ugly head, and perhaps they'll edit it, but I've always called it crap COVID. That's my expression of it. But yeah, it's you know, it's a very challenging thing, as we know. But what's interesting is where all of your businesses in this group have talked about adapting and changing, which is essential, which we know, because not only do you have to do that to survive, of course you have to do that within the realms of the legal requirements and to move forward, as it were. But looks like all of you guys are very determined, and that's probably part of reflective why you're on this group anyway, because before COVID you joined and you've been involved in it for within the group, but you are a determined business, which is great to hear. And I think, you know, by looking at other ways of diversifying is very, very important. And I think, you know, it's interesting to hear some of those things that you're doing. I was involved in a seminar back in April, and I said to businesses at a webinar I was at, to just say, the one thing I emphasized were, if there was a second spike, then you need to prepare for it. So it's interesting that we're coming through or into this now. Thankfully, we're in tier 1, as we all know, down in this neck of the woods. But I think it's also good to be prepared for a third or fourth, God forbid. Let's hope we don't get them, but if they do come reality, then you are even more prepared for the longer term. So I think it's all about the business planning. So yeah, so thank you for that. So we're going to move on to another section of our meeting, just to talk about briefly about the sector. So we've covered the COVID part, but if there's anything that anyone would want to share within their sector that might be of interest, that'd be helpful. So I'm going to start with Matthew, if you'd like to come on board, Matthew, to give us an update.
Yeah, thanks, yeah. Ray. Just very briefly, because I think the update that I gave earlier kind of covered where we are in the, what was it, Colin Powell said, we know what we don't know, and yeah, we don't know what we don't know. So from a bus point of view, public transport point of view, we're playing a waiting game. We don't know how long the government funding is going to last. We just have to see what happens over the next couple of months. I think I would just draw your attention to the tourist sector and our colleagues and friends in the coach industry, which, although it's the same as the bus industry in that we're carrying people to places, a lot of their work is discretionary and ferrying tourists around. And how important is that to the economy of East Kent? It's absolutely massive. There are coach operators out there locally and nationally who have had no work since March. They have had no government support other than the various business interruption loans, the furlough scheme. There is no sector specific support. And the highest profile casualty of that was Shearing's Holidays, and everyone's heard of Shearing's Holidays. About 200 coaches in the group gone overnight. I just wanted to flag that is a very real and ongoing issue, particularly for an area which is so reliant on tourism for a lot of the economy. And there is no end in sight to that at the moment. We don't know what's going to happen, but much as the point that Daniel made earlier about the fact that businesses are going into the winter now without the benefit of having had a season's worth of revenue. It is going to be very, very difficult for a number of colleagues in the coach industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really just what I wanted to say from a sector update point of view.
Okay.
And I have to leave you now. I'll see you all next time.
You got a bus to catch. Sorry.
Yeah, something like that, actually.
I'm trying to be a bit of humour into it to make us all happy and smile. There you go, guys. Everyone can see a smile. Okay, and nice to see Ellen come back.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, my technical issues.
Don't worry, no, it's fine. Mark, can we come over to you? I'm going to mix it up. How's that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, we're certainly been very busy throughout all of this. And initially it was with advice on the various schemes that were coming out as they were coming out, and our website was all credit to our website team that they were changing the advice as the government was changing within half an hour, which was quite difficult because a client would ring me up, start talking, and everything would then be changing. But interesting time on that. But we're still very busy. I mean, now we're obviously there's the tax return season coming up for us, and people have sort of held off a bit because they're more interested in getting their business sorted out, which is absolutely fine and what they should be doing. So we've got a lot of work on in that respect. Also, of course, we've been assisting and continue to assist clients with furlough claims, furlough advice, and the business interruption scheme loans and everything that's coming out of that. So we're dealing with the cash flow forecasts that are required and so on. So that has been quite a change in the way we've been working, because we've had an awful lot of those, and all of a sudden as well. The other thing that of course is coming up is the B word, and our VAT department have been working hard on this with duty and so on. So it's another area that is starting to for them anyway take over, and trying to ensure that businesses are getting prepared for that.
Sure.
Very important at this stage, and of course we're still looking at the big thing that's still around is the digital world, certainly for accounts and that. And that's still ongoing and moving forward quite at a rapid pace. So that's keeping us on our toes. But all very good. And I have to say that the majority of the clients that I speak to, despite what's going on, are still optimistic. They still have that optimism that they hope that there won't be a second spike, obviously, but if there is, they should be able to cope with it for a while. And as long as there's all this support going around and we all support each other, then we can get through it.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a quite a degree of determination, isn't there?
Yes,
because people
there is,
just
definitely.
don't want to let it win, and I think because of that, that's really quite encouraging, really.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's good. Okay, thanks for that, Mark. So we come on to Kimberly. Are you available? Would you like to? No. So we come back to. Sorry. Yeah. Are you okay? Yeah, Kimberly. I just thought if you could say a few words about your sector, would that be okay?
Sector-wise, well, obviously, loads of different sectors that we're having to deal with at the moment, and as I've said, it's actually really positive because people are, exactly as Ella said, resilient, positive, enthusiastic, and you just have to keep going on and working around what the actual situation is at the moment. And I think it's a difficult time, but we're definitely getting there.
Yeah, great. Okay, and it's great that Discovery Park is easing that mechanism. So you're offering the facilities for people to come in, knock on your door, and in you go, all ready and prepared. So well done with that.
But I do think what's important is that you put everything in place so people feel safe to carry on their business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. So, okay, Ella, would you like to tell us a bit more about your sector, maybe?
Yes, thank you, Ray. Sorry if I said it earlier, so if I'm repeating myself a little bit, but generally pretty buoyant, actually. As I say, we were in a strong position pre-COVID with a good forward order book, and thankfully, obviously, that's a good backbone to have. Going forwards, I think there's always nervousness with the construction industry. You know, how, you know, are we going to see the impact of this down the line? It takes some time. We've obviously got Brexit as well. There, we mentioned it. All things like that are going to be we're going to be facing. But I think, given, I think in a way, we've been given a new sort of found status as key workers, and it's made the construction industry again a bit more resilient, a bit more perhaps respected as well, and shown actually that our work that we're doing is absolutely pivotal to society and keeping the economy moving. So some ways, again, I like to see that there's some positives perhaps in terms of the importance of the construction industry from that skills agenda perspective, that it might encourage young people to consider construction as a really good viable career option. But generally, I think there's been huge impetus put on the construction industry, lots of promises of injections of investment and funding. So that hopefully is a positive. I think it's sort of shown a bit of a V-shaped recovery, and I think we are, you know, everybody, and it's, you know, seems to be generally pretty busy. There's lots of recruitment going on, which is good. So yes, there have been some redundancies in some areas, but sometimes I think that's just, that would maybe have happened anyway, for regardless of whatever reasons. I think we're just trying not to have too much of a blame culture of, oh, it's all because of COVID, so we can make excuses for this and that. We're just, as you know, and again, as everyone's alluded to, really optimistic and pushing forwards for the future. Sure. We haven't seen any tenders or promised projects culled or anything as a result of COVID. You know, there is obviously a bit of nervousness with, you know, investors and developers, but not to any level that perhaps we might have expected, really. So I think we're just, yeah, pushing forwards, and I think the industry as a whole, not just us at General, I think as a whole, yeah, lots more, you know, affordable housing coming forwards, even more in the commercial sector, which I do find a little strange, with everyone being encouraged to work from home, etc., etc. But maybe that's on the periphery, I don't know, probably not so much at all in the London market. But generally, I'd say the industry is faring pretty well, and so long may that continue.
Okay, great. And it might be an opportunity for your sector with a Kickstart program, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just encouraging, you know, more young people, apprenticeships, everything like that. I think everyone realises they've just got a role to play and a responsibility. Yeah. And that links in as well, because I'm now I'm chairing the Folkestone College Board and a governor for East Kent College. So that, and I was brought into that role really because of sort of passion for the skills agenda and promoting construction as a career. So I'm quite excited to get my teeth into that role really, and just see how we can really promote construction going forwards.
Yeah, and for our listeners, we did a tour around there before lockdown, and it was very interesting with the diversity and everything that's going on. So it's great, good to see stuff going on there. So that's good. So how about Cherie?
Yeah, so Ray, I think I agree with you. I think in a way it was like a bit of a shake up, and like, you know, we're forced to sort of wake up and kind of adapt. Diversity, I think, at the moment is absolutely key. We're lucky enough that we've got various sectors within our construction. So we've been very busy with both the public and private sector. Social housing, like Ella saying, big drive. We haven't seen the funds sort of dry up for that yet. So, you know, we're very fortunate. Again, a bit of nervousness moving forward into next year. We don't know, you know, how it's going to be affected. I would say positivity in terms of being in Kent. There's just a little that I've noticed is that there's been a big skill drive down to Kent, you know, from London. And I think in terms of, for instance, as I said, like the architect student that we've sort of employed here that was work experience, I remember asking her almost 3 years ago, would you consider staying in your hometown, which is Folkestone, and after you graduate and actually work here? And she said, no, I want to go to London. And how things have changed. Now she's here. I mean, it's not to say that she might, move later on into London, but at the moment, I think a lot of people are sort of just, wanting to stay coastal town. It's lovely. You can just enjoy the sort of scenery and atmosphere and lift the mood slightly with, being in nature and your walks, etc. So yeah, just the lighter side, I think it's proven good in that respect.
Okay. Yeah, great. I mean, you might have all had your moments during lockdown where things were very quiet and you went out into the country or even down the road and you didn't hear any traffic and stuff like that. A bit bizarre, but it's interesting. But yeah, a lot of people moving out of London into Kent, and the market is quite buoyant on the housing side, I understand, so it's pretty good. Okay, Daniel.
Our sector is, generally speaking, quite resilient, as many other people have said with their sector. But don't get me wrong, there have been casualties. A number of hotels haven't reopened. A number of B&Bs have decided to close down. Many have decided it's just not viable to stay open, to reopen, and they've decided to close until the new year. It's generally felt that we've got some hardship still ahead of us until at least March, April time. But especially down this part of the world, down in East Kent, we feel we are maybe better positioned than some other parts of the country as far as being able to see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. After March, April next year. A lot of the business that was on the books for this year has rebooked for next year. So in theory, as long as we can get through, keep our heads above water and survive until March, April, we should have a good spring, summer and rest of the year next year, providing there are no further waves or pandemics or more restrictions in place going forward. If the weather's good and if generally speaking, there is, as I say, the major events that are due to come to this part of the world, such as the Gulf Open now next year, Turner Contemporary and Canterbury Folkestone Triennial, other bits in Margate. Then, as I say, there are some significant bits of business as well as our general bog standard business like meetings, weddings, groups, and everything else that we can cater for during the year. The only question mark or cause for concern potentially again for our sector and specifically in this part of the world is with the whole Brexit situation, as has been mentioned, because there is a bit of a perception, if the media focus a lot on the fact that we are going to be a lorry park down here and the M20 is going to be gridlocked, then it could send a negative message out to the rest of the country or even the continent to almost put people off, to avoid coming down this part of the world because you're going to get stuck in traffic. It's going to be a nightmare to go and visit. So that's the only concern, that come January, we don't find ourselves in that situation with regards to Operation Brock, Stack, TAP and all the other ones that Brexit could potentially open up, and that we don't have negative connotations from a media point of view with perceptions of coming to visit down here. But as I say, other than that, on the whole, we are quite positive. We know we've got to tighten our belts for the next few months, do whatever we can, think outside the box where possible, which a lot of us have been doing with things like these working staycations, trying to convince people to look at hotels as places to actually, instead of working from home, you're sick and tired of being at home, use a bar, use a cafe, use a hotel room potentially to actually go and use that as a hot desk. Even targeting people from London to potentially come and move out of your flat for a number of weeks. Again, stay down here where we've got natural beauty, fresh air, spaces, and just a new environment to be able to focus on work. And I think there is an opportunity even for relocation. So Visit Kent, locating Kent, and the local councils again are trying to get people from London and other cities to think about us, to not only work but potentially relocate, bring your family down, and live down here in the future as well. So
yeah, sure.
there are some new opportunities that are coming out as a result of this, which people behind the scenes are working on. We're focusing on, our sector's focusing on doing what we can. Many restaurants and hotels have started to look at things like deliveries, takeaways, collections. That many restaurants have survived during lockdown and post lockdown, thanks to that. There are still some new bars and restaurants opening up and takeaways opening up around the towns. So as I say, there are winners and losers and new faces and people calling it a day in every part around the area. But on the whole, we're trying to stay positive.
Yeah. Okay, Daniel, that's fine. And it's good that you talked about your staycation, because I think for all the other businesses to talk to their staff, and the flexibility is a key thing. And I think I'm not suggesting there has been a lack of engagement, but all businesses should really engage with their staff, drill down as to what staff really want, as opposed to what you're telling them. So it might be a good tip to follow that through.
Can I just keep in there, Ray, just following on Daniel's point? I just think this is it's now about entrepreneurialism, and actually how can you make the best of a bad situation. It's no disrespect to the severity, the scale of everything. It's been a terrible time, but actually you've got to now turn it into some sort of positive and just think differently. How can you win in this bad situation, really? I was talking to a restaurant the other day, a beautiful pub out in the middle of nowhere, but they said, oh well, in the summer we just set up a kind of a wood fire oven outside, and we just had people distance outside so they could make the most of it and keep trading. And as I say, with construction specifically, I just hope that actually there might be some good to come of it now, in terms of perception and perhaps the reputation of the industry, really, that it's actually quite critical, really. And just newfound respect for all the other delivery drivers, supermarket workers. It's just amazing, really. You just got to take it out for them.
I think, like we were saying earlier, the resilience and then being flexible and working and moving forward with it is, essential. But I think, a lot of businesses are onto that. So, Lee, would you like to share anything in the sector?
I think from a legal perspective, as Mark mentioned earlier, Mark, like us, is a professional services business, and I think that we're fortunate in that in times of change and when things are happening, then people need our services. So we've been fortunate from that perspective. Not quite so adversely affected as what you might think of as more frontline parts of the economy. And things like the stamp duty holiday, for example, that's meant that our residential property team is extremely busy at the moment. How that's going to continue after March, I think when the stamp duty holiday ends, I don't know. But then other parts of the firm, for example, the employment team, they're very busy as well, because obviously there are lots of employment issues that have fallen out of the COVID crisis. And there are those elements of the firm which and the legal sector as a whole, which continue irrespective of what's going on in the world. Family law and private client law, and in fact, that's obviously an area, wills and things are areas where there has actually been an increase in work as well, as people sort of perhaps focus on the need to get that kind of arrangement in place. So we have. I think we've, like other professional service areas of the economy, we haven't been quite so adversely affected. There has been a drop off in some of the transactional work in say the corporate side and in the commercial property side, but even there it's not been as bad as we anticipated. So I think there's still a lot of activity going on in the economy, and as a professional service firm, we sort of stay busy as a result of that. And as others have mentioned, it's about having the resilience and the flexibility and the ability to adapt to whatever life throws at us. And I think a lot of businesses have been quite successful in doing that. There are opportunities that fall out of this as well in terms of efficiencies and new working practices. Not traveling to meetings and having Zoom meetings does have some benefit. There are some spin-off benefits to it, which we're hoping to harness.
Okay, Lee, thank you for that, and thank you to everyone. So we hope you've enjoyed the this session, and hope you picked up a few tips, but certainly given you a bit more sort of, if you like, scope and understanding what's actually going on. So like we've touched on, a lot of determination, productivity, changes happening, but in view of the COVID situation, everyone is reacting, which is great. And obviously, engaging with staff and moving forward. I think one of the key things is to continue to engage with your customers. It's interesting, and it's not a criticism, nobody in this group, but certainly. But I've noticed with a couple of companies that I've been dealing with, one of them has reached out to me as a customer and the other one hasn't. And the one that reached out is getting my business. So, it's just a practical thing, keep that going. It is tough, and I think Mark touched on it earlier. There's a few things around the corner we're having to deal with Brexit and COVID and difficulty in trading, international trade issues and all things like that. So there's an awful lot to deal with, as well as employees and everything. I don't need to remind you, but I wish you well. I hope you found this informative and interesting. We might do the same again fairly soon. So give some feedback to the chamber if you like, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay, that's the end of that. We stopped the recording, or that will
Oh,
be.
I thought we were going.
That's for the,
I was going to be off.
Oh no, I wasn't talking to you.
Sorry, did I ruin that bit, Ray?
It is pretty much a wrap. I thought it was very
There's always
interesting.
one.